Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we're here with a video on why range is an OP way to set up your account build and build your account from. I really think it is the best skill, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, but I just want to make this video because I always see people in my clan chat asking, they're about to get at that med level point, what should they really do to build up that bank value? And in this video, I'll kind of talk about why I think range is the best way to go. If you guys don't know, I made a progress series a couple years ago where I kind of restarted on a new account and maxed that account, and range was a big factor as to why I was able to do that so well. So if you guys want to check that out in a longer form and see what I did, feel free to. Also, all of the stuff that I talk about in this video will be linked down below. I have a lot of other videos I'll be plugging because there's just a lot of information here that I have already done. With that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, make sure to leave a like and let me know what you would want to see in the future down below. Helps me out a ton, and hopefully you enjoy. So we're going to start by laying out all of the reasons that I think range is the best, and then we'll kind of just dig more into each of them. The first one is that, well, just to begin, magic isn't useful at all. So essentially we'll be comparing melee to range. So that's just something we have to know right off the rip. In addition to that, there are just a lot of training methods that you can choose from with range that I think is really nice and enjoyable for anyone that wants to get in on it. It also has the better high tier weapons in my opinion, and the better bosses that you can farm for money. And finally, if you're trying to build your account efficiently, I think that Slayer is best done with melee, so I think you should be focusing more of your melee goals towards Slayer instead, because it's just a better way to play your account in my opinion. But obviously, play the game however you'd like. At the end of the day, it's up to you if you want to use this info. I'm not making you do anything. So we'll dig deeper into each one, starting with melee versus magic. In terms of, bosses that you can kill that you're going to be able to build your account on, I've put all the melee ones there. There's obviously a ton, and then for the magic side of it, there's a few. Realistically, the only one that's really important is Zulrah. Sure, magic is used at other places, and I don't argue that magic isn't useful. I really do like the skill of magic, but for boss killing and building your account, I don't think it's going to help you as much as something like melee or range could, and this kind of shows you exactly why. Keep in mind in this graphic, there's a ton of other melee bosses I could have added, and I just didn't add anything that was kind of partially magic, partially melee, so that's why I say magic is useful more places, kind of like theater and Chambers of Xeric, so eventually you do have to get it up, but it's just not that prominent. Then in terms of range, just having a ton of training methods. With the darts, you unlock those really early. I mean, there's tons of different darts you can use, but mithril darts are insanely cheap. You get them really early, and they're pretty good XP. And in addition to that, the magic shortbow is kind of like the high level version of just darts being an inexpensive training method. And then as far as the expensive methods, there is cannoning, which is like passive XP. If you decide to cannon while you do Slayer, you'll just get XP on the side essentially, but it'll cost good money. There's Chinchampas, which on the surface level are really expensive, but in reality aren't. And then there's the blowpipe, which actually is pretty expensive, but it tears everything. So I have a couple videos. The first one is which one is kind of the best for you to train with. Spoiler, it's probably the blowpipe if you can make a decent amount of money. And then I have another video on why chins are OP right now, and that's because they're just at an all-time low price, and they're insanely good, well worth the cost if you just want to get your range up. Would recommend. So then in terms of better weapons, this one obviously is going to come down to which monster you're killing, so it's not always going to be the case. But in general, the blowpipe is better than an abyssal whip, both around the same price. A blowpipe does cost money to use, but realistically the places you'll use it at will probably make your money back, and if not, the price of using it is justifiable compared to how good it is. In addition to that, we have the crossbow and Vigor's chain mace. This is for wilderness activities, but I like the crossbow a lot more. I think just all around, you're going to get better experiences out in the wilderness, and it's really good for some of the meta moneymakers in the wildy, like Venenatus, Callisto, stuff like that. And then finally, Twisted Bow, in my opinion, is better than a Scythe. I mean, owning them both for a decent amount of time, I always felt like I could do more that I wanted to do with the Twisted Bow, while instead with the Scythe, I just felt obligated to grind raids. And I mean, it's decent for that, I get that, but overall, I think the Twisted Bow is nice because it also doesn't have an insane cost to use per hour, since dragon arrows right now are pretty cheap. So essentially, I think range outclasses melee in most everywhere you're going to go in game. Again, like I said, tons of exceptions, but the majority of time, I think it's the case. And then, like I said earlier, I think that range has better bosses to build your account around than melee. Personally, I went to my boss progression video. Like I said, check it out below if you want to, but basically it's a video where I just kind of go through the easiest to hardest bosses in kind of the order that I think people would unlock them in. I went through the first 18 bosses. I made that number up before I checked. I wasn't doing it with any bias. I wanted to get about 60% of the bosses in there, so I managed to do that, and this is what I could find. On the melee side of things, we have Chaos Elemental, which is also on the ranging side. You can do it with realistically either. I just wanted to add it because it's an option. Also, Mole is somewhat decent around the same range as the Chaos Ellie. And then we have Bandos and Zamrock along with Vedion for those melee bosses. Bandos and Zamrock will pull you in a little bit more. Now keep in mind, you know, you might look online and it might say that the rates for Bandos, Zamrock, all this stuff are higher. I'm assuming like level 70s to 80s, like mid levels right there from 75, 85, kind of in that range. Other places might assume a lot higher. Realistically, if you're going to Bandos or Zamrock with probably a buddy around the same level, this is what you can expect. You know, maybe you have a high level friend that can carry you and maybe you make more, but ultimately Bandos and Zamrock and just God Wars Dungeon in general at low levels is pretty tough in my opinion, just because of the banking aspect, the KC, the respawn timer. There's just so much dead time that if you're not there killing at a consistent rate, it really does cut into your GP per hour. And for Vedion, I just wrote down that you get PK'd endlessly essentially. There's just tons of PKers here. Every time I've went there, I've just left by basically getting sat. So it's not fun in my opinion. And as far as melee bosses go, there are some doable ones, but if we look on the ranging side, I just think that they offer better alternatives. The Chaos Elemental, around the same rates, obviously. It depends what you use, but the Dragon Pickaxe is really what's going to make your profit there. KBD is a little better option for range here than the Giant Mole is for melee. Now, Giant Mole does get better, but you have to get the Falador Hard Diary done, and by the time you do all that, like, you shouldn't be doing Mole anyways. In my opinion, I've killed like almost 7k Mole. I know, I like Mole too, but it's just not that good early on. So I think KBD offers a better alternative for med-level bossing or just very entry bossing. On the bottom, all the rates here are going to be a lot better. Venenatis, I have 600k to 1.5 mil an hour. Callisto, I have 500k to 1.2 mil an hour. These are really, really high because you can get access to the crossbow, and at like 80 range, you do a decent bit of damage with that. So you can make good money off of that. I talk about how to get away from PKs from Callisto and Venenatis in those guides, so don't worry. And then Zora as well is just a nice alternative. Now, keep in mind there, you do need to get your mage up for that too, so it's not purely range, but it does kind of get your foot into the door into some good med to high level bossing with Zora. So just looking at the GP per hour, you can see the range is better, and I think by the time you hit kind of max level, like at the end of the day, melee and range are probably pretty close. But early on, it really isn't that close, so I think range really does allow you to build your account better. Melee kind of gets a comeback whenever you can start, you know, meleeing Vorkath, I guess, and doing chambers and theater and nightmare and all this high level stuff, but at the med game it's just not that great. And then finally, I advocate for people to train their melee through Slayer. I think that most Slayer monsters don't have that high of defense. I mean, almost all of them can be generally torn through with whatever you're wearing, so melee is going to be the way to go, because 99 Slayer is such a long grind. You don't want to be using a blowpipe and just training a range, because at the end of the day, it's such a long grind that you would have 99 range a couple times over. You need to space out that XP through different skills, so attack, strength, and defense makes sense because there's more of those skills to train than with range. That's also why range is really good to train early, because it's only one stat instead of having to get your attack and strength up. I recommend most people to focus on profit through Slayer. I think early on, if you have some money to splash, it might make sense, but long term, you know, profit does really matter with Slayer, and the more you could take home, the better. Now, you always have to be careful with that. I don't recommend people to go to like Konar while they're still like 75 Slayer or 80 Slayer. I think you should probably move on by then, but for the most part, profit is a good way to go. And in addition to that, I mean, melee gear is just so much better in terms of defense, so you can save more money because you don't have to eat or drink prayer potions as much. You can save time from banking more, and you can AFK more because if you have better defense gear, you can just let them all attack you, ideally if you're in a multi-area. I like AFKing a lot, so that matters to me. And then finally, even if you want to get your range up through Slayer, the best way to do it is to spend money on a cannon. So if you have a little bit of extra money, a cannon is a very, very good way to get that extra XP if you you don't want to spend time doing it in other ways. So those are the reasons that I think range is the best way to go if you're building your account, and that's the reason that I kind of built my account that way in the past. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Anything you want to tell me, anything you want to see me do, let me know in a comment down below. And if you guys want to see more videos like this as soon as they go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.